And good time zone, everyone, and welcome to Writer's Conduit. This is the traditional versus independent publishing panel. My name is Diane Morrison. I'm known here on Twitch as Sable Radia and throughout the internet. My pronouns are she, they. I am a hybrid author, and what that means, for those who don't know, is that I have been both traditionally and independently published. I will be the host for today. I'm not on either side of a debate, if there's a debate, obviously. And we'll start immediately to my left, which would mean Chloe.
Oh, that's a different order than it looks to me.
Oh no, I'm on my OBS. I'm sorry. I could go with the Google. You know what? I'll find out what we're doing on Google Meet.
It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay.
I am Chloe Alice Falcon, and I am self-published. I am 100% self-published. I support traditional publishing, but I am self-published.
Awesome. And then Joe.
I am Joe Compton. I actually started traditionally. I have a wild story to tell about that sometime at some other venue. And I then self-published, and now I'm with a small indie press. So I still stayed indie, but under the more traditional model. So I'm kind of hybrid as well, even though I run Go Indie now. So.
That's awesome. And actually, that's one of the things I hope we'll be able to touch on today is like, there's kind of a spectrum here, right? It's not like this is one side, that's the other side. That's awesome. That's great. And then Jeff, last but not least.
Yeah, that's fine. My name is Jeff Habiger. I run Artemisia Publishing. We're a small, traditional, but indie publisher located in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We have a couple of imprints that we do. It's kind of interesting because in a way I'm also a hybrid because I publish my own books through my own company. So in that way I'm self-published. I like to provide services for people to get their books out there who may not always be able to publish out there in the more bigger publishing companies, and who may not have the desire or interest to do self-publishing. And there are a few people that are out there like that. So, but that being said, I have several friends who are self-published, and we get along great. So,
yeah, absolutely. Hello to everyone. Yeah, hey, that's my publisher, says Winged Leo. Hello, Ricardo. Good to see you.
Hey, Ricardo.
Hello to Cho Wright, since they did a shout out. Hello, good to see you. And hello to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm not going to do my usual process of introducing or saying hi to everyone individually. That's what I tend to do when I run my own streams, but we don't have time for that today. But thank you for coming. I'm glad you're here. All right, so one of my goals that I'm hoping to do today, as we were talking about before we went live, is that you hear a lot of negativity on both sides of the traditional versus independent publishing debate. I don't think it's helpful dialogue. I'm kind of wanting to give people who are at the point where they are considering what path might be for them enough information that they can start to make an informed decision, right? So if you're looking for, an aggressive debate like I might have about adverbs in the future, you're not going to find it, right? But hopefully we can be informative. So let's start with definitions, right? What is independent publishing versus traditional publishing? And let's start this time with Jeff. But I do want to hear everyone's opinion because the definition can vary, right?
Oh, and that's an excellent point because it can definitely vary from person to person. And, my understanding, how I've kind of defined it, is that traditional publishing is a model where the author seeks out a publisher either through agent or in themselves. They work together. The publisher decides to publish the book. A contract is signed between the various parties who are involved. The publisher then takes over and does pretty much everything. The author will respond with, here edits and comments, but the author doesn't have to pay anything. The author isn't generally responsible for figuring out printing, may not be responsible for figuring out things like cover art, cover design. It depends on the publisher who does that. But generally, the publisher handles all aspects of getting the book from, Word document, written draft to finished product out into the world, whether that be just an audiobook, an ebook, paperback, whatever it might be, or combinations of all of those. That's how I understand a traditional publisher to be.
Awesome. Okay. And Joe, what's your thoughts on this?
I would agree with that to a certain extent. I do think, though, the smaller the press, the more indie it is, because it does follow the idea that you're independent in a sense. You're not beholden to any kind of corporate dialogue or any kind of massive marketing campaigns or ideas or anything like that. That it's more independent presses usually tend to take chances and risks more than your big four would. And so I think that in that respect, I think that it does have a little bit more indie to it than traditional. I mean, all the things that Jeff said are correct, and I agree with completely. In terms of it's a traditional format, but as far as following a traditional sense of the word, I think it's more that the big four are considered more traditional because they have more of a corporate stake in things and not so much. They're all run by big corporations, if people don't know that. And so in that respect, I think that the independent publisher is more of the person that is more invested in you and your desires and ideals. And so I think it's more indie than it's not. And then on the indie side, I also, obviously self-published authors and authors that seek, it doesn't necessarily mean that they don't also get cover art done and editing done. They also can employ other people to do those things for them. And so you kind of cross a little bit of each line in each sense of the word. I do think the one key thing that Jeff said about traditional is that you're seeking an agent and that agent represents you. And then you go into traditionally submitting for a publishing contract, and that makes it a little bit more traditional than independent. But I think there is varying degrees.
That's awesome. That's very thorough, and I agree with I agree with what both of you have observed so far. Yeah, I think you've got a good point about how there's this blurring line and on maybe okay, so if traditional is over here, the big four are the most traditional, and if we've got indie over here, I paid for everything and I put out my book myself, that's the most indie we got, right? So and then
there's
still,
extremes,
right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we have a question already. I will keep track of the questions, but we're going to start with a couple of, and thank you for using if you would like to ask a question, it would be easier for me if you would use the channel point reward. It's worth 1 point, right? So everybody should be able to participate. Just put that in the text box that shows up when you click on the treasure chest icon down there below the chat.
You don't have to get up and do jumping jacks or anything like that when they do that, right?
No.
Because I was on a panel and the guy had to do that. It was kind of weird. That was his. They rewarded him and he had to get up and he did like jumping jacks or did some kind of exercise.
Oh yeah, okay. I have make me do sit-ups or push-ups as one of my rewards usually, but I disabled all of that for this.
It's kind of interesting in the middle of a discussion.
Yeah, you bet. But please use the channel point reward. So if Zoob the Mad, if I could get you to submit that again under the channel point reward, just so that I don't miss it, it will appear on a separate window for me, and that way I can make sure to get your questions answered. Oh, thank you. Posture check. So, posture check channel point reward means adjust your posture. Make sure that you're, comfortable and sitting properly, right? So that's great. Okay. And then on to Chloe from here.
So, excuse me, I pretty much agree with everything out there. And I feel like there's also There's some flex in the definitions based on whether you are adding a separate category for self-publishing or not. And that's why I always say self, because I don't want to say indie to somebody and then think that that's not self-published. So I put right out there that I am self-published. I don't go through any house at all. But I do also consider that indie. I just know that people flex on it. But yeah, I think it's definitely a spectrum as opposed to two completely separate categories or three completely separate categories. And it is 100% about how much the author does versus how much a separate entity does for them. Although obviously if you're self-published and you are paying other people to do, your covers, your edits and all of that, then you are 100% self-published. That's all I have to add to that.
No, that's brilliant. That's great.
I think Chloe's right that it is definitely a spectrum these days. When we started as Artemisia 17 years ago, back in the early 2000s, the idea of self-publishing wasn't the thing that it was unless you went to a vanity press, basically where you paid a publisher to put your stuff out there. And in those 17 years, publishing has changed so much, and it's interesting how much has changed and how much it has allowed people to do what they want to do in putting their material out there. And what I think is interesting is that the big five, big four, however you want to call it, have kind of lagged behind. They still are very conservative in how they publish books, and
do business.
And I mean, and that translates down through the food chain. My distributor that I go through, they want a year advance notice on publication of a book, and a lot of self-publishers who are publishing books every month, that would be anathema to them. There's like, wait, what? A year? And that's something, but that's a legacy of what traditional publishing, the big five, big four used to do or still do. And it's pushed out to the retailers. I need 6 months to plan what I'm going to buy and order for my store, and all of that has continued in. And so the publishing industry has changed so much. And that's why I like the flexibility of being where I'm at and where a lot of self-published authors are at these days in this new mode and dynamic. So
I go back even further a little bit. I'm an old soul here, and I come into it before there was even ebooks, and so the only way to get published as a novelist was to go the traditional route, get an agent. And you can't even submit. You still can't, but you couldn't back then even submit unsolicited manuscripts to any publisher, let alone the big five or big four. Even medium presses wouldn't take those. You had to get an agent, and that agent had to know somebody in that publishing company, and then go forward. And that's how I started. I pitched a bunch of agents. I went to the Colorado's Gold Conference, Writers Conference in Denver, and I pitched to a bunch of agents, got an agent, and then we went forward through that process. So, and if you were self-published, you were either doing a self-help book or a nonfiction like manuscript, like a tech book, or you were doing vanity pressing and being, pretty much ostracized if you did a novel vanity pressed. So all of that changed when Amazon got in the game and became an ebook, a presenter and put this whole new technology out there, and then it exploded. And the thing about it too is it's taken a long time for indies to get even recognized still, even after that, because a lot of people were doing vanity pressing through ebooking, and it was a tough gig to get that going. So
indies still aren't always recognized.
True. Yeah.
So that is a fact.
I just saw an author of mine wanted to get into the Tucson Festival of Books, and to get on some of their stages, and basically they flat out say, we don't take self-published, we don't take small indie presses, we don't take any, basically if you're not with a big publisher, who owns an office in New York City somewhere on the 15th floor of whatever, and everything, then you're not considered. And that kind of gatekeeping just rankles me. So
yeah, me too. That's shameful. That's absolutely shameful, because that's just denying an audience,
definitely
an opportunity.
I ran into that in my local library, believe it or not. I was just donating my books. They're like, oh, we don't want your crap, basically.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to harp on that too much. There's a couple things that I want to go to there, actually, based on what we, the whole spectrum of the conversation we just had. First of all, let's do a little bit of definitions for people, because often terms overlap, right? We've talked about traditional publishing. We've talked about indie or self-publishing, right? What is an indie press?
Well, I mean, I consider myself to be an indie press, so I'm not part of any other company. It's a partnership where Artemisia Publishing is a partnership of 4 people. So we're independent from anybody else out there. I'm not part of a subsidiary of a larger company or anything like that. So in that sense, I'm independent, and that's generally how I handle that definition. There's other minor definitions that go in there, everything from micro press, small press, medium-sized press, all those kinds of things, and that's where you can start splitting hairs and everything. But that's how I understand myself to be, as an indie press. So,
yeah. Thank you. It's just because those terms tend to overlap. Kind of like when we tried to set this up, we're like, okay, there's Twitch moderators, so we can't call the panel moderators, so we're going to call them the panel hosts instead, and then the person that, will be the, anyway. Like I said, unicorns and hippogriffs next year. Anyway. Okay, the other thing I want to start going into is you guys have mentioned some of the issues involved on either side. And this is one thing that I did want to get into, was pros and cons. From your perspective, this time we'll start with Chloe, right? Actually, you know what? We'll start with Joe. We haven't picked on Joe yet, so we'll pick on Joe. Okay, what are, in your opinion, some of the pros and cons of going in either direction? And maybe we'll address small indie presses as a third category too.
Okay. For traditional, it's you, as Jeff mentioned before, you don't have to pay for anything. Everything is done for you. You lose, you get, that's one pro. One con is you lose a little bit of control, because especially if you get to the bigger aspects of it, depending on the publisher itself, you may not have a say in how the cover goes, how they market it, or, initially. And the other pro for being traditionally published is the distribution network that a traditional publisher has. They usually can reach, as we were just talking about, they can get into the Tucson books, book fair, and they can get into all these places. They can get into the Barnes and Nobles and set up libraries. They can get into the Today Show and get you on the Today Show kind of idea if they really wanted to. None of them don't do that. It's usually a PR person that ends up doing those kind of things. But those are things that a traditional publisher offers. An indie press, or let me go with indie self-published first. You have all the control. You make all the decisions. You can you can put it out there immediately, as Jeff mentioned before. And I think one of the cons, though, is that you don't have, you might employ an editor, you might employ a cover artist, but you don't have anybody to stopgap, cover you on if something were to go wrong, if something were to happen. Also, you are stigmatized pretty quickly. You're given a title that you may not deserve, but that a lot of people will recognize, and it's as far as indie presses go, like I said before, it's the relationship. It's that they care about you and your work, and that they're going to foster you and your work, and present you with everything that you're going to do, and be along with the ride, as opposed to you just being a a cog on the wheel, or something that is just going to be part of the corporate machine. So
Yeah, that's a good point. There is a feeling by some people that if it wasn't published by an actual real publisher, it's not a real book, and you're not a
yeah,
real writer. And you
which
run
is
into that.
crap.
It's
But
garbage. It's utter
Yeah.
garbage. But you run into that in various circles,
Mhm.
and it depends on the circle, right? They'll even, split hairs about things,
Yeah.
right? This library, my local library that I was talking about, would not take my self-published books, but they were perfectly happy with the one that had been published by a publisher, because that was a real book. Somebody else had given me validation and told me I'm a real writer now, right? So that was okay, right? Yeah, we'll go to Chloe next.
So I think it kind of comes down to that sliding scale of like what is more important to you, and therefore whether it's a pro or a con. So of course, like number one, the biggest pro to being completely self-published and doing everything yourself is you get all of those royalties.
nice.
You get that 70%
Except Amazon.
from Amazon.
Except Amazon. They get some of your royalties, even
Well,
if you're
yes, whoever
self-published.
you're
We'll talk
publishing
about that.
through, they're going to get some, but like if you are traditionally published, if you're at one of the big four, you will never see anything even remotely like 70%. So that is, but you also have to like pay for everything else around that. So that is a con. And then you have to do all of your own marketing. And if you're not good at marketing, then that can be a major con. And, no matter where you are, you do have to do some of your own marketing. Even if you are with the big four, you're going to have to do a bit of that, but you have to do all of it when you are self-published. So then you also have the control factor, whether you're going to have 100% control or whether you're going to kind of pass it off to the publisher. That could be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on who you are. There's a lot of authors that have absolutely no idea, not just how to make covers, but also how to recognize what a good cover is. So it can actually be like really, really good for you to give up that control to somebody who is an actual expert on it. But then the problem is, of course, for a lot of people, you can't actually make that decision because again, especially when we're going all the way to the big four, they are gatekeepers. And depending on what you write, even if you are writing a huge genre, some of the biggest genres are not picked up by the big four. So even, and this is coming from, just to clarify, I write paranormal romance, and the big four.
It's huge. It's a huge genre.
Yeah.
It's very popular.
And unless you were in the big four, like before the indie and the self-publishing market opened up, you're probably not getting in it now unless you are literally making New York Times bestseller. And by that point, you're probably so comfortable as indie or self that you're not going to want to give up the royalties anyways. So that is what I consider to be the biggest con, really, for going traditional, is that even if you write a great story, ignoring the quality of your story and assuming that you are writing the best of your market, you still might not be able to get in because of what you're writing.
You're totally not wrong. The thing is, the big four are big corporations, and corporations have to make money. Ultimately, it isn't about the quality of your book. It's about whether or not they think it's a marketable product.
Yep.
So if you are a celebrity, this is why all the best-selling books are Michelle Obama, because they're like, oh, well, that's a good brand. That's marketing. That's great. But, they're not likely to take a risk on first-time authors. And, if you do succeed at getting their attention that way, you have won the lottery. Oh, Joe, you have something you want to say to that?
Yeah, I want to just add that most, if you're going for traditional publishing, most of them, agents included, will ask you what your social media following is. That's part of their criteria now. And if you
Totally.
don't have a threshold, they're looking for a certain, I think it's like 100,000 or something like that followers on Twitter and Instagram. If you don't have that threshold, they're more likely, even if your book is like slam dunk marketable and everything like that, they're more likely not to take you on or give you like the crappiest deal they can possibly give you and shelf you, because they don't want you to go to a competitor, and two, they still want it because it's good, and if it blows up, then it blows up. But they're more likely not to take you on if you don't have the social media backing that you need from them. So.
My own experience backs that up. My first book was a nonfiction Wiccan instruction book that was published by a medium-sized press. And they asked me, right, those questions. Their threshold wasn't 100,000 because they're a medium press. Fortunately, I had been doing a pagan podcast prior to that, so I had talked to a lot of names in the industry already. When they saw that I was connected to these people on Facebook, they accepted my book, but they looked at it, right? It was a factor. In that case, it really wasn't what I knew, it was who I knew, right?
Yeah, that's part of it too.
On the other hand,
that's,
oh no, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, and that's one advantage that me as a small publisher, I have authors who ask me. In fact, we got asked yesterday on the panel that I was on what to expect from a publisher. If we, do we require social media presence? And my only real requirement is you need to have some kind of presence, website, blog. I don't care. I'm not going to look at numbers. I'm curious. I mean, if you have a really good following, that's a plus. But if you're just building your following, I work with a lot of authors who are first-time authors, working on their debut novels, who, don't want to do all of the work that goes into self-publishing, and everything. And so from that perspective, those kinds of things aren't as important. So again, as an author, when you're looking out there, keep those things in mind, that there is, again, that kind of scale and gradation that, some publishers are going to require certain levels of already established followers and everything. The point Chloe made earlier about marketing is also interesting, because these days even the big four publishers are writing into their contracts that authors will do marketing. They don't have despite how big and it seems like behemoths that they are, they're cutting money wherever they can. They're cutting money in editors. They're freelancing a lot of their editors. They're cutting money in their marketing departments and only putting the money into the things that they expect to be the blockbusters, basically. And so they're writing into their contracts that authors will do X amount of marketing per month, per week, per day, and everything. And so that's something that is whether it's a pro or a con, I don't know, but it's something at least to keep in mind. So
that's a very valid point. I've also noticed that the traditional publishing companies are starting to outsource as much of this information and duty as they can. I've even seen it. Okay, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Greg Bear, but he's actually a pretty well-known name in science fiction. I recently read a series by him. He's been an established for a long time, and man, did they ever cut on the editing budget on that book, right? I'm like, indie and self-published authors often get a criticism for the poor editing in their books, and my advice that I constantly give people is, if you got to spend money, that's the thing you want to spend money on. If you skimp on everything else, get good editing, because it'll make or break your book, right? But right, like this has looked like some of the indie publications where people have not made that step. And in part, that's because of the changing market, right? As you all have pointed out, as Joe said right off the bat, Amazon changed the whole game. Right? So now, being corporations, like Jeff said, they are looking for ways to increase their quarterly returns for their stockholders.
Shareholders,
Their shareholders, And, so those
Still,
things are...
we have 4 instead of 5 because Viacom realized quite quickly that they couldn't make any money doing the publishing thing anymore. So they sold it as fast as they possibly could. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a few things that I want to chase. One thing is what Chloe said about the popular genre issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I find that publishing is one of the most opaque industries in the world. I have no idea what the fuck is going on out there, and I don't think anybody else does either.
No.
No.
But I saw this presentation that was part of the Nebulas a couple of years back, where they were analyzing sales data, and not just with their chosen sources, right? Like a lot of sales data. For instance, the New York Times bestseller list, it takes a couple of very specific sources, and
Yeah.
that is how it rates its bestsellers, right? The reason why it is so respected, and don't underestimate the importance of respected, right? This is the big advantage. The bigger the publisher you've got, the more respect you get, and therefore the more press you get and the more access with distribution. Yeah, go for it, Joe.
Well, I was going to mention with the marketing aspect too, you'll get respect there too. You'll get the blue check mark from Twitter right away because you are part of Random House or you're part of Harlequin or whatever. You know, well, HarperCollins. If you say you're a HarperCollins author, they don't care if you have one follower. They'll blue check mark you right then and there, and so you get that modicum of respect as well as a public figure, as a celebrity, right off the bat for being part of the Big Four.
And when more people are willing to give you attention, you get more attention. It's not fair, but that's the way it is.
The way it works, yeah.
Right? Okay, but on the other hand, right, they're still relying on their original sources for what determines what sells. If you go into your bookstore, say Chapters around here, you will find that the science fiction and fantasy section is this little cobwebbed corner of the store in the dark, right? Where there's like half the shelf is Warhammer and Star Wars books, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But then,
Because they sell.
yeah, that's right. But then go into the young adult section, and every title on there is a science fiction and fantasy book, right? It's Divergence, it's The Hunger Games, it's Harry Potter, right? Okay, so then you go online, and you realize that science fiction and fantasy and paranormal are enormously selling genres online, right? My thought on this was that basically ebooks are taking the place of your, pocketbook on the shelf. And therefore, when you used to be able to go into the drugstore and you'd have like a couple of different random titles and they'd be worth $1 or $2, and then you'd have like the random science fiction book in among the, thrillers and the romances and whatnot. You don't have that anymore, right? Because the cost of printing has gone up considerably, right? So, do you find that? Do you think that ebooks are taking that place in the market? And do you think this is part of what is changing the industry and making it so confusing?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Joe's got it. Yes.
Go Chloe.
So this is something that comes up a lot because my writing partner writes primarily in YA. And as a paranormal romance author, despite the fact that like we could kind of dull ours down or spice ours up and get ourselves into each other's category, it's not just that ebooks are taking over, it's that ebooks are taking over certain genres and not other genres.
Interesting.
And YA, and I feel like you guys can all disagree with me on this, but I feel like one of the biggest components to why things like romance are more ebook, whereas YA is more paperback, is the fact that the YA readers are more likely to be bloggers and TikTokers and Instagrammers, and they want to be able to hold that book as they're talking about it. So there is that like bragging rights of saying, I possess this book, look at this physical book that I have. Whereas you see less of that social media interaction with romance and other adult genres.
That's interesting. Romance has got to be the top selling genre in ebook. It is huge,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
But try to get a romance book published through anything that isn't an indie press, right? It will
Right.
not happen unless
Even
you're already established.
even Harlequin nowadays has got standards that are way above anything that they've ever had before. You know, they're not
And
even looking at it.
the interesting thing with Harlequin is, of course, now they have the spin-off Karina, which is all ebooks.
Yeah.
So you can get into Harlequin if you like meet their standards exactly,
Yep.
and get those paper books. But more likely, you're going to end up in Karina, and that is ebook only.
I have the answer to this question.
Okay.
It's the demographics. The demographics are what skews everything that's going on. Kids have been growing up on shopping online. We all grew up with bookstores around us, and indie bookstores have started to make a comeback, but they're making a comeback. They had to die 1st before they could come back, and so. And that's because of the Instagrammers and book talkers and everything like that. That's what Chloe said. And now these kids all grew up online. They all grew up shopping online. They grew up looking online. And for indies, we've priced out the big four in the marketplace as far as ebooks go. We've been selling them some of them we give away for free, which we can have a whole conversation about how terrible that is.
We totally should at some point. Yeah. Next year.
The 99-cent book ebook, the $2.99 ebook, the standard right now is about $4.99. That's probably about where you want to be if you're an indie. And so that is still, I mean, I just mentioned earlier on a show that I did, I looked up the newest Stephen King. It's $14.99. Literally, that's what it costs to buy the paperback. They're pricing the ebook at the same price as the paperback because the big four don't want to deal with these ebook things. And the only reason they have to is because of libraries, because libraries are turning toward that. And so now they all have deals with libraries, so they have to do it. But that's the difference, is the demographic has gotten younger, and which is great. I want to see more young people read, because the more young people read, the more we all have chances to make money, and also the more we all survive, and the world of books survives. And I think that's the big difference, the big factor in all this.
That's a good point. I want to go to something in the chat, actually, that it brings up an interesting point. Let's see. Jade Estrada, writer, says, I think genres also make a big difference. YA lovers seem to have a higher disposable income, or am I on crack? That's an interesting point. What do you guys think about that? I have some thoughts, and I'm interested in yours.
I think that they're, if not directly on point, they're really close to the mark there. There are certain genres where people tend to have more of, I don't know if it's just a disposable income, but they're more willing to spend money into certain areas. And you see that in some of the science fiction subgenres. You see that certainly in like paranormal genres, especially paranormal romance. I think, people, if they read one, they're going to read a lot, and they are willing to spend the money to get those things and everything. But people who read more traditional, detective mysteries or hard-boiled, detective dramas or things like that, may not be as willing to spend, because they're very set in what they want to read, and they're not just the kind of consumer who reads everything. I mean, in our day, it was, like you said, Diane, there was the paperbacks that you could get for $2.95 or whatever it was, and you'd pick them up and you'd read that one, and you'd go pick up the next one, and you read everything. It wasn't just, oh, I only read this author or anything. If you read one author, you tended to read a whole bunch of authors, and you picked up and you read across a broad spectrum and everything. And so I think that, I think they're probably right that there is a group out there who has income that they're willing to spend. Now, whether or not you want to call it disposable income or not, they do have money that they want to spend in certain areas.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. I genuinely feel that growing income inequality is also contributing to the market, right? And to be totally transparent, everybody who's been on my channel for any length of time or on my Twitter knows that I have a very left-wing sort of point of view. That being said, right? I do think that people do have a lot less entertainment income
Mm.
than they used to. Buying a book in paper is a financial investment now. It used to be something that you'd pick up for your hobby. Now you have to think about that purchase. So it becomes harder to get attention, right? And harder to convince someone that they want to own a paper copy. This is one of the reasons why traditional publishing can be a benefit to a lot of people, because if you want to be in a bookstore, you're far more likely to get there, for someone to pick your book up off the shelf if you go traditional, right? Yeah.
Well,
We are.
and
Oh, go ahead. But
I was
I
going
was
to say
just going to
real
say we're
quick.
running short of time. I want to get to a couple things before we get to questions. Yeah.
Yeah, but just real quick to your point, there was the traditional publishing, around that idea of that income disparity that is out there. You're more likely to get your book into a library through a traditional publisher, and libraries are the heart and soul of being able to get your book out to people who may not be able to buy it but who want to read it. Don't knock libraries. I see a lot of people on social media who say, why would I ever sell my book to a library? They buy it once and never buy it again. And that's just wrong.
Yep.
Libraries support authors, and they
Yes.
support readers who may not normally be able to buy your book.
That's so much better than getting your book pirated. I mean, you get paid for it.
Which you will. Understand
yeah.
that, by the way, regardless of what your book is, it's going to get pirated. You will
Yeah.
find it on the pirated sites. You'll find it there before it's officially released.
Yeah.
Give them the DMCA warning and carry on with your life,
Yeah.
But yeah, it is much better than getting pirated. And the other thing is, this is how people buy books, right? Because it's an investment to do a paper book. People will start with the library. People will start with an ebook that's, on sale at Amazon for $1.99, right? And they'll go, okay, I really love that story. Am I going to read this again? If the answer is yes, they'll pick up your paper copy, right?
Right.
Or if you're like an indie author and you have a bunch of indie author friends who want you to sign a book and send it to them just to have it as a signature book, that's also another way you get sales from.
Yes, I do sell a lot of books personally. I'm sure Chloe does as well, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, there's two things I want to quickly address, but we're already at 1:45. Obviously, we're going to have to schedule this for 2 hours and meet again next year because there's so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so Amazon, right? Amazon changed the whole game. Are you for or against Amazon?
As a small publisher, you have to be there. Most traditional or most indie self-published people, it is their primary platform.
Yes.
I don't know anybody who is self-published who isn't on Amazon, and everything. They are the 8,000-pound gorilla in the publishing world right now. Even the big publishers have to at least acknowledge them and pay attention to them. Does that mean we have to like them? No, not really. But they are there, and we have to at least acknowledge them. I would say that if you have a thing against Amazon, go try and find a small or medium-sized publisher to work with, because if you're going to self-publish, unless you're doing only through a different platform out there, you're going to have to deal with Amazon. A small publisher, even a traditional one, even one like myself, I can get you wide, and everything. So,
Joe, for or against?
You have to be with it. It's kind of like a bad marriage. You're just going to be stuck in it, and you just have to deal with it because you have kids growing up in it, and you gotta be there for the kids, and that's your books, but there are alternatives. There's Smashwords, there's Drafted Digital, there's other places you can go. Unfortunately, though, the problem with that is getting not you is not the problem. It's getting the readers there. to get there. I tried. I really tried. The first self-published book I did, I tried to stay away from Amazon and got on Smashwords, and I know Mark Coker, and I've talked to him, I've interviewed him, and so I was really on board with all of this, what he did there, and he's done a remarkable job with what he's done there, but telling my friends and family to go to Smashwords instead of going to Amazon, they're like, why? I can get it at Amazon. Even if you're not going on Amazon, it's going to be there. So,
Yes.
it's people are just used to using Amazon for everything. And so you can't convince them when you have to sign into Smashwords and to create an account. Nobody's going to do that. They're just going to be like, whatever. I'm just going to go to Amazon. I can one click it and I got it. Who cares? So you have to be with them, unfortunately.
Chloe, your thoughts?
So one of the things that hasn't come up yet that is a perk to being self-published is Kindle Unlimited. I get, especially as a newer author, the bulk of my royalties actually come from Kindle Unlimited. Kindle Unlimited is where your book is exclusive to Kindle, and people who have a $10 a month subscription can read as much as they want with it, with books that are in that catalog. It is the safest way to try out new authors, right? Because you have already paid that money. It doesn't count against you. You can read 2 pages and then never pick it up again, and it hasn't hurt you in any way. So yes, absolutely. For Amazon, I do have some stuff that is not in Kindle Unlimited that is wide. It still does best in Amazon versus what is in, I use Smashwords for what's wide. I still do better in Amazon. And really the reason that most of them are not in Kindle Unlimited is because I cannot advertise, because Kindle has standards when you get to the more explicit romance.
Yeah. Kindle Unlimited is definitely something, if you decide you would like to go indie publishing, try it. It doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for a lot of people. I have a lot of friends who've done very well. Most of them tend to be writing in the romance genres, so that may be a thing, or thriller, right? That tends to do really well in Kindle Unlimited. YA too, yeah. Science fiction fantasy with weird genre mashups went nowhere, by the way, just FYI. But
it's the whale reader genres, the genres where people are going to pick up a new book every day. They love that because they're paying $10 a month instead of $400 a month to read a new book every day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good investment for them. Okay, Amazon, you got to deal with them. You have no choice. Everybody has to deal with Amazon. They are totally you must breathe oxygen to function on this planet. If you are going to make a career in writing, you must deal with Amazon. So keep in mind that if you choose to go indie, you are not going to be able to get away from the corporate machine. A lot of people are like, oh, I hate corporations. Screw them. I'm going to self-publish. You're still going to have to deal with the corporation. It's inevitable, right? One thing that I got mixed feelings about it myself, right? Because on one hand, yes, the market is completely changing. The gatekeepers' gates are being broken, right? And now it is becoming a much more diplomatic process by which the reader votes with their dollars, right? Getting attention on there is difficult, but it is a bit more democratic than some exec at Bantam going, yeah, this is too weird for me. No, right? Yeah. On the other hand, they are artificially driving down the price of books. They keep a fair amount of your royalties, and they are making it very difficult to make a living as a writer. If you want to make a living selling books, you either have to go with something that's rather large where you can get really wide and respected distribution, or you have to produce books like they're free. You have to write a book a month, right? I can't do it. I can't write a book a month, right? I can. So, it puts you in this weird place where you have to look for other options, right? we are out of time for that. There are only a few minutes left. I would have loved to have gotten into other things, so we'll do it next time. I'm going to go with the audience questions here now, and let's see if we can do some rapid fire here. And thank you, James, for backing up other people's questions, and also to my mods for covering that. I've got it. You guys are excellent. I'd rather have redundant than not. Okay, so Zoob the Mad said, any advice if you're approached by hybrid publishers? I guess by that you mean indie publishers, right? That is a good question, because that leads to a whole nother thing, doesn't it?
There is
Jeff?
there is a hybrid publisher model out there where the publisher and the author both put in about dollars. So the author pays some and the publisher pays some. That is what is considered to be a hybrid publishing model and everything. In that case, look at the contract, figure out exactly what is spelled out, and see if it's going to be a fit for you. I personally would steer away from it. If you're going to spend money, you might as well just do it yourself and self-publish. But there are models out there. There are some standards that are out there for how hybrid publishers are supposed to act. You can search them and find them, but I would be cautious of those.
Yeah, my general experience is if they're approaching you, it's a scam.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? If you approach them, it might not be. So yeah, definitely not only read the contract, get a lawyer and copyright and rights management to read the contract for you, because I've heard horror stories of people who end up trapped in, they're getting screwed, guys. Don't let that happen to you.
I can add two things to that. One is check Ally. Ally vets all of these types of publishers, which is the Alliance of the Independent Authors. If you go to ALLI.com, that's Ally, and if you're a member, they even if you're not a member, they have this for free. This service for free. You can check who's reputable and who's not. They rank them and give you an idea of that. And also Writer Beware. Follow Writer Beware on Twitter. They give you all the scams out there that have come up, and they'll break them down for you.
Yeah, okay, so I was just recommending that, actually. Ally does have really good information there. So does SIFWA's Writer Beware. You can find that on the SIFWA blog and on Twitter. And they keep track of when somebody's gotten screwed, they investigate, right? So, yeah, definitely check your resources there. Awesome. Okay, what are your thoughts on using Amazon to publish my first novel? Asked Cho Writes.
Yeah.
Why not? Honestly, my thoughts are, different platforms are good for different people. If you've got something that you think might actually sell, right, in a bigger market, my suggestion is see if you can land an agent, right? But after a while, you may figure out that, either there's something, like your genre mashup is too weird. May know something about that, right? Or you'll get the sense that maybe there's you might learn things from that too, right? If you try to go for an agent or a publisher first, because people will often give you feedback, right? They will tell you, yeah, we don't think this is quite ready. Although, oh, cool. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you, guys. I just broke my goal on my Kickstarter, apparently, to publish my next book. So thank you guys very much. Yay!
Congratulations. Yay.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you guys so much for the support. You're amazing. I'll scream later in the Discord. We're running out of time. I don't want to take over the rest of the panel for my stuff, but thank you very much. It's really wonderful. Thank you, guys. Stretch goals now. Audiobook is the next one. Yay! Okay, but okay, thank you. And thank you guys so much. Okay, getting back to the questions. They suggest, someone suggested to me, and I found this very, very useful. What you might want to do is write some short fiction and pimp it around to the various professional markets out there, right, that are in your genre. The Grinder is a resource that I highly recommend, right? It's a place where different publishers put out, their call for submissions. You can rank your searches by how much you want to get paid, who's interested in first time authors, like what genre you're trying to publish in. It's great. But you might want to try that a bit first, and then you can either, you'll polish your diamond skills a little bit before you start branching out into independent publishing. But then again, some people, right, have just gone, okay, I've got a great idea, I'm going to put it out on Amazon, and boom, right, and they're making a whole career. Obviously Chloe was one of these people, because she's like all for that. And great, if it works for you, awesome. So, pros and cons. One con is if you're going to send it to an agent or a publisher and wait for their slush pile to be gone through, you could be waiting months to a couple of years for them to get to it. You are usually not allowed to send it anywhere else while that's going on. And then they might read the first paragraph and reject you. Right. I was watching Bain Books going through their slush pile on a live stream, and it was very disheartening. Right? It was really disheartening, because that's what was happening. Right? So it depends how much patience you have. Right? And you decide when you run out of patience. Right?
Yep.
Next question was, how do you find an agent? That's a big one. My suggestion, so we don't take up the whole time unless somebody has like a couple of snippets of quick advice, is go watch the How to Querying Basics VOD, because they were covering that in much more detail than we have time to do. Anybody have any thoughts?
#PitMad. #PitMad on Twitter.
PitMad is an event that happens a couple of times a year. There are other similar events, so look for those hashtags. You can find them by looking for #WriterCommunity on Twitter, and if you connect to them, they will tell you about this stuff. And yeah, give them a Twitter pitch, right? And it's like your elevator pitch, your one-liner, and see what happens.
It's like being at a conference where you're pitching to agents, so
yeah.
online.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great resource. I totally agree with you. All right. I bet this isn't going to take, we're going to go over a couple minutes, but Guinevere asks, what services does Artemisia Press offer to its authors? I know you're like, I don't have time for that in a short minute.
Well, the simplest way is to go check out our website, apbooks.net, and there is a For Authors tab there, and you can check out information about some of the things that we do. In essence, I mean, we are a small press. We're a traditional press. I mean, we don't offer services as much as submit your books, and if we're interested and we think that it's something that is a fit for us, we'll send you a contract. You can sign the contract, and then we get the ball going. I do editing on the books. We send them out for copy editing. We do the cover design and get the covers together. We do everything that a traditional publisher does, but we tend to work more in partnership. Feel free to hit up folks like Ricardo, Winged Leo, and ask them how we work and everything, because I work in partnership, and whatever works best for the author and us together to get the book out. So, but check out our website, and there's information there. Or you can find me on Twitter at Artemisia Jeff, and you can shoot me a DM. So,
Steph, please give more information about what you're saying there in the chat. Steph Weaves Tales says manuscript wishes. You have to go. Thank you for being here, Chloe.
Thank you.
Have fun.
In 30 seconds.
Thank you so much. She was great. I'm not going to pay attention to names at this point. I hope that's okay. Right? Yeah, and speaking of which, Jeff, we got to talk.
Okay.
Yeah, that's cool. Based on our conversation previously. All right.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Awesome. Okay, Tenacity Grove says, as a complete novice, what's the process of approaching a publisher without an agent for a first draft?
Make sure that the publisher you're approaching is one that takes what you're doing.
Yeah.
You look at your genre, look at what they're asking for. Don't just submit it blindly. Most publishers will tell you what they're looking for and what they need, and find the ones that you can submit to and then submit to them.
Exactly. Joe's right. I mean, go to the publisher's website. For one, they're going to have information on how to submit. They should have submission guidelines and follow them to the letter.
Yes.
If the publisher says that you must print it out on pink paper, double spaced in Courier font, and mail it to us at this PO box, do that, because if you don't, they will ignore it and just toss it
right in the recycling bin.
Right. So follow those submission guidelines, but take a look at what else they have published. If you are writing a paranormal romance that is heavy in erotica and the publisher you're approaching has never published one of those, they probably won't be interested.
Nice.
Absolutely.
I request that people who are interested in working with us to see what we've published, read our stuff, but that's just because I'm greedy and like people to buy my books. But,
no, it's great advice. It's great advice.
But it's a good way to understand how or what kind of material a publisher publishes is to read what they've already published and everything. So
awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. A lot of publishers do have, even fairly large ones have something they call a slush pile. They will give you instructions. Yeah. Is there a good way to vet agents / secure one from Zoob the Mad is our last question.
Well, it's the same process as what we were just talking about. It's
exactly
basically look for what they're doing and how they're doing it, and then that's who you query and that's who you submit, and you query them. Do not send them your damn manuscript. You query them first. Well, most of them will,
in the recycling.
Yeah. I query them and give them what they want. Even if they want a synopsis, you're gonna have to write it. It's part of the deal.
And there are a few resources out there. SIFI and some of the others where, and like Writer Beware, that will help with, they have information about agents. There are some even agents out there who basically compile information about other agents and everything. So if you just search around on the web or on social media, you'll find those people. So, and then you can check on them. So
I'll add an old school way, the way that I did it, which is go to writers' conferences and sign up for the pitch sessions and pitch to as many as you possibly can. You usually spend like $25-$30, and then they let you pitch to as many as you possibly can there. And there's usually 10 to 15 of them there, and usually by the end of the day, they'll tell you, okay, go ahead and pitch to everybody. I mean, still do your research and know who you're going to pitch to first, but ultimately you could probably pitch to all of them at that point there, and I would do so, and then go to the bar afterwards and buy them a drink and hang out with them. That's where you get the deals. That's where the deals happen, at the bar, not at the table.
Yeah.
So.
This is absolutely true. People will remember you if you made a connection with them. They will not remember you if you are some random name, nor will they remember you if your story is the most brilliant story in the world, because they have read 1,000 just like it.
Yeah.
There is no original idea anymore. It's about how you tell it and whether or not they think they can work with you.
I went to a pitch session once where the guy had earbuds in. He was listening to music. He wasn't even listening to you. It's like, I don't know why I would ever approach that table, but the people were going up to him and sitting down and pitching to him. And I was like, dude, he's not even listening to you.
Yeah. That's a waste of your time. Don't do that to yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen, so much. Chloe's already gone, but thank you very much to her. I don't know where to find her on the internet. I wish we'd had time to ask her, but please check out her books. Let's see, I've got the panelist thing here listed as a command, so we'll fire that up. Look for her under Chloe Alice Balkan on Amazon and obviously Kindle Unlimited, and definitely support authors. You guys want books? You gotta pay for them, or the writers can't afford to write them, guys. We gotta go get a job at McDonald's, right? So, yes, and
please no.
Yeah, no, exactly. But that's, and speaking of which, by the way, regarding the Kickstarter, thank you for making me not go get a job at McDonald's. And and to those who were asking,
well, it would be Tim Hortons for you, wouldn't it? More likely,
probably, or yeah, Tim Hortons for sure. So thank you for not making me do that. And yes, we are going for the stretch goals. We have 18 days left. The next stretch goal is basic audiobook. So Yeah, thank you so much, and hell yeah, let's go for it, right? And thank you so much for your support, guys. That's awesome. Jeff, where do we find you on the internet?
You can find me at primarily on Twitter. I have two places there. Artemisia Jeff is for the publishing, and then my author and just myself is Tangent Jeff, and Jeff is spelled Geoff. So that's where I'm at on Twitter. On Facebook, you can find me there. It's Artemisia Publishing, or you can find our author page. It's Habiger Kazee Authors. And check out our websites, apbooks.net for Artemisia, or just my author stuff is habigerkazee.com. So
Absolutely awesome. And thank you so much. By the way, Artemisia Press makes some awesome books.
thank
I've
you.
done some blurbs for one of their authors. The book is beautiful, and the cover art is perfect. So yeah,
Thank you.
good work,
So
great work there, and they treat you right because they got nothing but good things to say. My author friends. So.
Thank you again. We try.
And Joe, where do we find you?
So you can find me through GoIndie Now, which is youtube.com/GoIndie Now. And if you do publish your book, come and see me because I'll help you promote it. That's what I do. We produce a lot of shows out there that help authors talk about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And you can go see us on Facebook, facebook.com/GoIndie Now, goindienow.com. And myself on Twitter is JoeDream73. And then Instagram, GoIndie Now, TikTok, GoIndie Now as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much, and thank you for being with us as and hanging out with us. We're going to raid Tale Foundry now for, I believe it's our last event of the conference before the closing ceremony. I've got a little emotional about that, actually. It's AMA with Tale Foundry. I'm looking forward to it, and thank you all so much. It was a true pleasure, gentlemen. It was a true pleasure to talk to Chloe, too. I hope that we'll be maintaining some of these connections, and we'll see you again next year.
Yes, thank you. It was fun.
Thank you.